I'm really pleased to see that the Baloch youth, they are responding to the duties that history has put on their shoulders. Dr. Nasir Dashti asked me to reflect my views on the Baloch national struggle and the aspects of Sindhi-Baloch relations. So I would like to briefly provide an historical overview and then concentrate more on the more recent history of these relations. The Balochs and Sindhis are at the crossroads of history. Long period of occupation has brought the two nations at a stage where their national identity is in grave danger. Their thousands-year-old history is being mutilated. Their natural resources are being exploited ruthlessly for the benefit of occupying nations. Their language and cultural traditions are at the verge of extinct. The Baloch and Sindhis have been resisting the subjugation and occupation of their land, and they have been offering tremendous sacrifices in main and material. For many analysts of national liberation struggles, one of the reasons for the failure of the Baloch and Sindhi national resistance to achieve the goal of national emancipation has been the lack of a united strategy by the leadership. This has been reiterated again and again. And as a political worker who believes that the success of national struggles of Baloch and Sindhi people are intertwined, I would like to briefly present my views on the importance of a united struggle of these two nations in the context of historical relationship. Historically speaking, the Baloch and Sindhis suffered jointly and they resisted jointly. The onslaught of jointly to the onslaught of various invaders. Some 1400 years ago, present landmass, which now we know as Balochistan, was invaded by the Arabs under the command of various Bedouin tribal chiefs. At that time, major parts of Sistan, Makran were the provinces of Sindh under the Rai dynasty. The Baloch tribes, which were persecuted and scattered by the Sassanid emperors Noshirwan and Shahpur, were beginning to settle in these areas. It is a historical fact that a large number of Baloch tribes were part of the Sindhi army in Sistan and Makran under the command of Rasul, who was the governor of these areas. The first encounter of the joint forces of Sindhis and Balochs occurred in Sarhad region of western Balochistan. In the bloody battle, Sindhis and defeated by the Arabs. However, it was not a decisive battle. Later, the Baloch and Sindhis suffered major defeats in the hands of Arab army under the command of Muhammad bin Qasim in various battlefields such as in Kaj, Panjkur and Ormara before the conquering army reached Lasbela to face a large army sent by Raja Daher. Sindh was finally conquered and its provinces were devastated by the Arabs, and among the tragic episodes of the history, thousands of Sindhi women were taken as prisoners and sent to Damascus as part of the plundered wealth from Sindh. It is beyond any reasonable doubt that many of the Baloch were also among the prisoners. During 11th and 12th century, when majority of Baloch were forced to vacate their boats in Karman and Sistan, settled in present-day Balochistan, they faced, along with their Sindhi brothers, the onslaught of various invading nations, and one can cite many historical happenings of that period. A historian is better qualified than me to elaborate on these events. In 1839, Balochistan was occupied by Britain, and after 4 years, Sindh was also invaded by the British forces. The Baloch and Sindhis, under the leadership of Talpur rulers, fought for the dignity, honor and sovereignty of Sindh, and thousands perished, facing a far superior army of superpower of that time. It will be time consuming to deal with all those events in history which the Baloch and Sindhis fought and suffered together. I will briefly summarize Sindhi-Baloch relations since the annexation of Balochistan into Pakistan in 1948. Students of recent history are fully aware that after the creation of Pakistan, the Baloch political leadership were in close contact with Sindhi nationalist leaders such as Sai G.M. Said, Comrade Haider Bajatoi, Qazi Faiz Mohmand, and many others. There was a closer relationship and interaction between Sindhi and Baloch political activists, intellectuals, writers, and poets. They worked together in political parties such as National Awami Party. The struggle against one unit primarily was driven by common struggle of Sindhi and Baloch people headed by their nationalist leadership. However, due to the intrigue of some of the so-called progressive elements which were planted by the state establishment in the Baloch and Sindhi political parties under the facade of being socialist and communist attempted on the formation of a genuine united Sindhi and Baloch nationalist political party were not successful. In 70s, when Baloch nationalists under the leadership of Sardar Ataullah Mengal came into power, it was an inspiration for Sindhi people. A lot of Sindhi political activists who were under persecution during Bhutto's government took refuge in Balochistan, and even on the insistence of federal government, Sardar Ataullah Mengal refused to hand over them. When Sardar Ataullah Mengal's government was illegally dismissed, the entire genuine Baloch leadership was imprisoned and a military operation was started against the Baloch people. Sindhi nationalist and political parties strongly opposed it and launched one of the most consistent campaigns against military operation in Balochistan, and hundreds of Sindhi political activists were rounded, tortured, and sent to prison. One of the renowned Sindhi politician, Mir Ali Beg Talpur, was also imprisoned along with Baloch leadership together with his course of Sindhi political activists. Mir Rasul Beg Talpur resigned from the governorship of Sindh in protest. In 80s, under the leadership of exiled Baloch and Sindhi leadership, Sindhi, Baloch and Pashtun National Front was formed in London to spearhead the struggle of oppressed nations against the subjugation of Pakistani state. The front proposed a confederation of nations and a new social contract between different nations comprising Pakistan. The front did make some initial impact, however, unfortunately due to obvious reasons, it soon became ineffective. In 90s, Sardar Ataullah Mengal, together with Sindhi nationalist diaspora and Mahmud Khan Achakzai, discussed and established Pakistan Oppressed Nations Movement Poonam. Poonam did a lot of work to bring together the Baloch, Sindhi and Pashtun nations forces together. However, when Mahmud Khan Achakzai took charge of Poonam, it slowly became ineffective and eventually has become almost non-existent. In 2000, Sardar Ataullah Mengal, Mir Balat Murray, together with World Sindhi Congress, established Sindhi Baloch Forum to raise voice against national oppression of Sindhis and Baloch in international forums, and to provide information and analysis to nationalist parties struggling for the right of self-determination. This strengthened the unity among Sindhi and Baloch diaspora, and since then they have been together on all international forums and been vigorously advocating the cause of Sindh and Baloch on various occasions. During the current military operation beginning from 2002, which involves large casualties among the Baloch, including the towering personalities of Nawab Akbar Bukti and Mir Balat Murray, Sindhi people have raised their voice and shown their solidarity to Baloch people in strikes, processions, statements, demonstrations, articles, and hunger strikes. Sindhi intellectuals have been in the forefront in highlighting the suffering of Baloch people. During last 10 years, more than 1,000 articles have been written in various Sindhi newspapers in support of the Baloch cause and against military operation and atrocities. However, fact of the matter is that no concerted effort has been made on behalf of political leadership of these nations since 2004 to forge greater unity among nationalist political parties of these nations. It was despite the fact that such a move was most important in order to streamline the national resistance. Presently, there is no obvious political platform on the ground where Sindhis and Baloch leadership could sit together and discuss their response to enemy advances and formulate a common strategy. The division within each national struggle and a lack of urge for a strategic approach are among the major causes of present state of affairs in the resistance struggles of these nations. For many political and social analysts, the time for the Baloch and Sindhis has come for a final and decisive attempt to regain their national honor, dignity and sovereignty. However, to be successful, formulating a viable and feasible strategy for countering the ever-dominating menace of the state is of fundamental importance. Forming a union of all nations' forces and Sindh and Balochistan must be the first step towards this. National liberation struggle cannot be fought in isolation. History has proved that in unambiguous terms, resistance by a suppressed people almost by definition presents a situation in which there is a vast imbalance of strength between the opposing sides. However, the resistance strategies are designed to cope with the situation in which the enemy is infinitely superior. Unity within the ranks and files of the resistance movement and its unity with natural allies is one of the basic necessity of any successful national resistance. Besides being strengthened with pooling of intellectual and material resources of allies, it is important in the sense that involvement of the masses is the key to the success of any resistance, and this involvement has to be one in all-round political mobilization. In the context of Baloch and Sindhi national resistance, mass mobilization is only possible by an alliance or organization led by a leadership having the trust of people. This trust of Baloch and Sindhi masses cannot be achieved by a divided leadership and dozens of small political groups claiming to be leading the war of national emancipation. Our political leadership and intellectual cadre must keep into mind the fact that favorable conditions for a national liberation struggle nationally and internationally are dependent on many factors. Favorable conditions are not created by subject and ideological activity only. These conditions can be brought about by developing feasible and far-sighted political, economic and social strategies. To me, the first step towards a workable solution to the issues facing the national resistance movement of Sindhis and Baloch is the pooling of available resources. This pooling of resources can only be materialized by a meaningful dialogue for the formation of a united platform of all national forces in Sindh and Balochistan. There is an urgent need to strengthen the unity on ground, and having a united front of Sindhis and Baloch nationalists is the call of the hour. The Baloch and Sindhi leadership should not waste time on trivial issues. They have to act fast. For a national liberation struggle to succeed, it is imperative to constantly evaluate its weaknesses, strengths, and based on this evaluation, formulate feasible strategies. In this context, the current conference is very timely as the Baloch national struggle stands at a critical juncture in its history. I believe the outcome of this conference will provide further impetus to the Baloch national struggle and for struggle of other marginalized nations such as Sindhis. I believe that the destiny of Sindhi and Baloch people are intertwined, and the outcome of their long and tortuous struggle in many ways will depend on real, strong and strategic unity of their two people, combined with adoption of realistic strategies. United we stand, divided we may fall. Long live Sindh, long live Balochistan.